Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sarah and it's time for my best books of the year for 2023, and I'm gonna be honest, this was a very difficult list to make, mostly because I had read somewhere around 300 books according to my personal spreadsheet, so I am certain that I missed some things that should be on this. I'm going to start with the honorable mentions that I have, and these are not categorized by genre. The others I have categorized by genre. So let's knock our honorable mentions out of the way first. At the top of the list is a fantasy book that I know got some mixed reviews this year, but that's okay. I loved it. And that was The Witch King by Martha Wells. I just really thought this was great. A lot of people, I think, went into this with the expectation of something akin to Murderbot, which is not Martha Wells's kind of style with fantasy, but I just really loved this. This is a story about colonialism, about people taking what is not theirs, and what happens when people rise up and take it back. It is fun, it's heavy, it has moments of sadness, but also hope and light, and I just really enjoyed this. I definitely would recommend more, if not recommend more. I would definitely read more if Martha Wells was to write more in this world. I would read it in a heartbeat, honestly. So this had to get mentioned because I just truly enjoyed it. And for the most improved author, I read 2 of his books this year and absolutely adored the second book. I've got to give it to Alexander Darwin with his Combat Codes series. I was meh on the first book. I liked it, but it didn't knock my socks off. But the Griever's Blood sequel really did it for me. I loved how he changed the style with a multiple point of view. I loved how he added in more depth and more realism almost to the world. It's fantastic. This is a fantastic fantasy series about a world where there are different races of people. Each fulfills a role, and our main cast of characters are grievers. They are people who fight for the others and they solve disputes. Alexander Darwin uses Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a real inspiration for a lot of his fights in this, and the fight scenes are fantastic. There are more than a few fight scenes that will make you go, ah, when things turn ways they shouldn't and pop in ways they shouldn't. So know that going in, but it is a great series and I cannot wait for the second or the third book that should be coming out next year. For romance, I have 3 books, 2 of which I have. The third is on its way to me. I don't think it's going to get here till tomorrow. So let's knock that one out first. That's going to be In a Jam by Kate Canterbury. I read this towards the beginning of the year, I believe, and it has just lingered in my mind since then. The setup, it's not that groundbreaking, but the characters, the way they interact, the banter, and the child specifically in this, there is a young girl, I think she's under 10. She is so fun and precocious and I absolutely adored her. And it just, the whole thing really came together well. This is about a woman who moves back to her, we'll call it her hometown. She grew up a portion of her life there, and she inherits some sort of a farm from her, I think, great aunt or her grandmother. And the nearby farm is managed by a boy that she was friends with in high school, and they fell apart when she left town, and he kind of holds that against her because he was into her. He was very much in love with her. And there is a little bit of animosity between the two when they first come back together, but that's quickly resolved. And they end up in an arranged marriage sort of situation. Not arranged marriage, fake marriage sort of situation, because she has to stay married to keep the farm. And it's just so good. It's so sweet and wholesome. The third act breakup, there was almost nothing there. It was quickly and easily solved. The characters, though they did have some conflict and they had some external pressures that tested their relationship, were smart. They got along, and I just love the way they communicate and talked with each other. So this one just stuck with me. It was great. I fully intend on reading the next book she put out, I think in the same town. It's called Shucked. But we'll see. This physical copy is coming soon. I'll likely reread this and then dive into the next one. The other 2 that I have for best romance, I put Small Miracles in this category because it does have a romance in it, and my fantasy category is a little bit heavy. It's bigger than romance. Let's just say that. So Small Miracles has a small romantic element to it, but this is the story of the angel of petty distractions, petty sins. It's little things like you shouldn't eat that piece of chocolate, but you did it anyway. She's a fallen angel, and she gets a job doing something for an actual angel, and things don't go to plan. They don't work out. She ends up involved with this woman and this woman's niece, who she is a caretaker for. The story deals a lot with grief, with family, and finding connections that you didn't know were there. This was, full transparency, a good book until about this far to the end, and I started to bawl. So go in knowing grief is mentioned and handled. It's done well, it's done carefully, and I loved this. The final romance that I have is Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall. This is another one that got really mixed opinions. It's written in a little bit of a different style. It's told from Puck's perspective, and he is narrating the story of a young woman who is under a curse. Bad things are happening around her and to her. Someone is trying to possibly kill her. She has to figure out who that is and why, and along the way she ends up involved in it with another woman who also has some traumatic and dark history, and people don't particularly like her because they blame her for things that were out of her control. This was hysterical. I laughed so hard through this. You have to go in knowing that the humor is going to be quirky, maybe a little over the top for some folks, but if you're okay with that, I adored it. I thought this was so good, and I am so excited for the second book that is coming out, I believe, next year. So if you like a quirky, over-the-top type of humor, I highly recommend this one. My smallest category, sadly, this year is science fiction. I only have 2 books, one of which, again, I don't have. This is the last book I don't have for this entire list. And again, it's coming. It's just not going to get here till next week. And that is 3 Grams of Elsewhere by Andy Geisler? It's on the screen. You tell me. This is an indie science fiction book about empathy and how empathy has been weaponized and turned into a commodity, a skill that the military and the government uses. Our point of view character is an elderly man in a sort of retirement home, and he gets swept up with the military after murders occur, and they believe that he is either linked or can help them solve those. Again, I can't say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but this has some crazy twists and turns. This takes some really interesting looks at the idea of empathy, how we other people, how we put a barrier between ourselves and them, and thinking about how they would feel about something. And I just really enjoyed this. I slept on this for a long time, and I really regret doing that. I think more people need to read this. It was fantastic. The last science fiction for this category is Frontier by Grace Curtis. I almost said Draven. That's an entirely different author. Grace Curtis. This is the Broken Binding edition. I went out of my way to order this. This was my first Broken Binding book. And this is a story about a woman who crash lands on a post-apocalyptic Earth, and she is off on a quest to find her crew and her captain, her commander, the person who is in charge of the expedition that was going to send them to this Earth. Earth here is ruined. It's desolated. There is very little there. It's dried up. People scrounge to live, and the people who live in the stars, they don't get on with each other. And this was supposed to be sort of like a peace mission, an envoy. It didn't work out that way. But this is told in almost vignettes, short stories that interconnect, and they're told from different perspectives. We don't get her perspective until much later in the book. Instead, we get perspectives of the people that she interacts with along the way. It really helps to build the world and help you understand what's going on. And at the end, oh my goodness, the ending on this really just messed me up. I absolutely loved this. I really recommend people pick it up. It's not getting as much buzz and hype as I think it should have. I'm extremely excited for Grace Curtis's next books, which I believe we have one slated for next year. I will be reading it. Pick this up if you have not. I loved it. And our last category is the biggest because it's fantasy, and that's my bread and butter. So just going from the top, these are in no order because don't ask me to put these in a number order. The first is going to be The Warden by Daniel M. Ford. I loved this book. This was really underhyped. If for people who love cozy fantasy, which is a little bit of a stake, this is going to be the one for you. This is about a young woman who graduates from her various major schools, and she is assigned the job to be the warden of a small, like, frontier-style town. She gets there, and it's not what she wanted at all. It's kind of run down. It's a farm town. No one trusts her. She has to live in a tower that effectively has no roof, and there's a goat that keeps breaking in. So for most of the book, we see her struggle with that, learn to get on with the people who live there, and eventually you start to understand that there is more happening just outside of town, and she has to figure out what that is and stop it. The end of this is a cliffhanger ending. I'm still upset about it. And I cannot wait for the next book. There is, I just hit myself. There is necromancy for those that want it. There is magic, all kinds of it. And there is a lot of just slice of life style stuff going on. And this is so good. Also for people who like books that can be equated to D&D. Right here. Longtime DM, I can tell you, and he has confirmed that a lot of inspiration was drawn from D&D, and some of the systems are very similar, so you're going to see similarities, especially if you're familiar with sorcerers or wizards. So I highly recommend this. Loved it. Next on the list, one I've talked about, I know a lot, and that's The Pariah by Anthony Ryan. Anthony Ryan is one of my favorite authors. I read this with my husband. As you can see, I had a lot of thoughts. This is the story of Alan Scribe. He is an outlaw, and he ends up involved in this religious rebellion following a woman who might be mad. She might be a little nuts. She thinks that she sees visions of the gods that tell her to do things, or that tell her things are wrong, and she has to fix them. And this trilogy follows him as he works for her and his growth over that time. I am reading the second book now, and he has moved from an outlaw to sort of a thief to more of almost a knight. It's fantastic. The beauty in this one for me is that you start out the book and you're like, Alwyn, you're obnoxious. Just straight up, he's obnoxious. He's one of those kids that looks at somebody and says, I could take him. I could take him in a heartbeat and I could make him bleed. It's like, oh man, okay, kid. All right, you're hard. We know. You're a big bad. But everyone else also tells him, you're being obnoxious. The other characters in the book will tell him he's being obnoxious. It's very aware of it. He's aware of how obnoxious he is. One of my favorite lines in the book is someone who looks at Alwyn and says, you use too many words. That really caught me. So this series is a win. I will hopefully finish it out early next year, and I can have some complete thoughts, but this first book was a 5-star for me. I really liked it. How many times can I say that? I'm going to say it again. Nolan by Michael J. Sullivan. Another one that I read with my husband. I had a lot of thoughts about and made me sob at the end. This is a really great story because it's almost self-contained, and I am aware that this is a sequel series to another series I haven't read yet, and there are sequel books to this book that take place years later. But you could almost read this on its own, I think, as long as you go in knowing that there is other context out there and you can get more. This follows the children and the children's children of some of the characters from the Age of Books, Age of Legends, those books. I can't remember the series title ever. Follows them, and Nolan, our titular character, is the prince of the city, and he has been sent off, he thinks, to be killed. His father wants him killed, but he keeps surviving. In our opening chapters, he is fighting a horde of goblins. This is what you see here. It's also following, I believe her name was Seraphim? I can never remember. And she's in the city, and her son gets kidnapped, and she has to figure out how to get him back. She is hearing a voice in her head that is making demands on her, and slowly those two stories come to intersect, and the city is under siege, and we see where things go from there. I really loved this. It was a lot of fun. I will say I did look up some slight spoilers for the fate of her child, because her son is a baby when he is kidnapped, and it is set up to almost look like he was murdered. I don't jive with that business, so I did look up spoilers, but even though I did, I still absolutely love this ride. Some of the characters in this broke my heart, but some of them just healed it right back up. So this was so much fun. I really loved it, and now I see why everybody likes Michael J. Sullivan so much. We have 4 more, and these are all indie books. I think these were the only indie books on the list. Maybe. I have been diving back into indie books. It's been a hot minute since I read a lot of indies, and I'm getting there. So we're going to do these shortest to longest. So at the top, we have The Fall by Ryan Cahill. This is the intro novella to his Bound and Broken series. I know some people say don't read this till you've read some of the others, but he himself has said that you can read this one first and then read the series, which is what I am doing. I really loved this. There is dragon riding. This is a story of a city under siege and how it falls and what happens to its protectors who are meant to keep it safe and why it falls and who is corrupted, that sort of thing. I have the first book in the mail coming to me. I intend to read it very soon, even though it's, like 700 pages? But I had to put this on the list because I still think about some of these scenes, and I read this a few months ago. This has just, again, lingered in my brain. I really love this. The next novella is Sister Samurai by Tatiana Obey. If you've been around for a while, you probably knew this was going to be on the list. This is the story of Sister Samurai who goes into town for her daily duties and ends up having to stop a band of miscreants from trying to take over her town and cause trouble. This sounds very simple, but it is so in-depth and covers so many topics. We have grief, survivor's grief, motherhood, some stress disorder stuff in here. This is just amazing. I really wish more people would read this. I cannot wait to get to more of Tatiana's books. There is a commercial break in this book that I just thought was hilarious. It was so good. And again, absolutely amazing. There is a commercial, an ad for her other series here. I will, like I said, be continuing with her work in 2024. I'm excited. And the next 2 are both fantasies I read because I am trying to keep up with SPFBO right now. The first of is Daughter of the Beast. This just blew my mind. I'm going to be honest with you. By E.C. Graves. I was just stunned at how amazing this was. I guess I went into this with low expectations. I didn't know what I was going to get, but I ended up walking out going, oh my god. It's fantastic. This is the story of Zenny, as she is known at the beginning of the book. She goes by Zenitelle later. She is kidnapped in a raid on her town by the Volcari, which are these gnoll-like women. And they take her and they train her as one of their own. And it is her growing up in this warband, growing up learning their ways and their culture and their custom and the culture and customs of other creatures in this land, and how perhaps she is caught up in a much bigger prophecy than she thinks. And it was just incredible. I loved the setting and the style of this. Zenitelle is a brownie, so she is very small. The gnolls are quite a bit bigger, and it talks a lot about her size difference and how that affects her style. She also ends up involved with some hobgoblins as well. We see a lot of cultural clashes. There's a lot of siege and fighting in this. It was so good. I had so many tabs, and I wrote and highlighted this because I loved it so much. I have to finish this series next year. This was fantastic. I really recommend, if you have not tried this, pick it up. And the final book is The Fall Is All There Is by C.M. Kaplan. I don't know how the judges are going to do it this year for SBFBO. I don't know how you're going to do it. Everything I have read for the finalists, everything I've read of the finalists, I've loved. So, good luck. This is a fantasy in a post-apocalyptic world, following a young man who is the 4th in a set of, hold on, they're not twins, they're not triplets, it's a quartet. I can never remember the word. I'll put it on the screen. I don't know why this word escapes me, but it always does. He is the youngest in this set. His sister is going to inherit the throne, and his 2 middle brothers are involved in ways. He is currently living in another house away from the capital city because he does not like politics and the involved machinations. It's stated on page. He is autistic, so that stuff just it drives him a little up the wall. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't want to deal with it. This is first person point of view, so if you don't care for that, go know that going in. But his voice is so strong and it's so unique, and I just was swept up in it. I read almost half of this in a single sitting, and I could not wait to finish it out. I ordered a copy to read physically, and again, it is tabbed and marked to hell and back. Fantastic story. There are moments, this author could really write a body horror book and write it well. There are moments, for example, this horse here, animals don't survive in this world very well, so these people have to grow and make their own food. They grow meat like plants, and they build these clockwork horses, which are basically slabs of meat wired together with like bicycle chains and gears, and they ride them. And the description of the characters riding the horses, I was eating food and had to stop. It takes a lot. Just the description of the horse walking, it was like, I didn't like it. In addition, there's a scene where someone's arm gets sawed off. That was a lot. I really loved this. If you want something with some autistic representation, that's the word I want. This is great. It's also queer and just a fantastic read overall. There aren't any other books in the series out yet. This one is brand new, but I am eagerly awaiting the next. Loved this. So good. That's it. That's all I have pulled off my shelves. Now, it's entirely possible, again, and this does not include manga, but it's entirely possible that I have missed some stuff. I will look back on this video later and go, oh, damn it, I should have included, this. It's okay. That's just how the cookie crumbles with my reading life, but these are the things that stuck out to me when I went down my list, went through my shelves of some of the best books that I have read this year. Let me know if any of these were on your list, or if you're interested in any of these. I would really like to know. I especially implore you to check out some of the indies that I mentioned, because they are just so, so good. And I can't wait to see what everyone else posts and thinks in the next, week or two. Thank you so much for watching, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye.